Hello there. In this episode, we will take a look in top 5 commercial failures in game consoles. The Atari 5200 was created as the successor to the highly successful Atari 2600. Reasons for the console's poor reception include that most of the games were simply enhanced versions of those played on its predecessor and the awkward design of the controllers, which themselves were also prone to breaking down. The console sold only a little over 1 million units. When it was discontinued, its predecessor was marketed for several more years, as was its successor, the Atari 7800, which was marketed more carefully to avoid a similar debacle. Nonetheless, the failure of the Atari 5200 marked the beginning of Atari's fall in the console business. The Dreamcast, released globally in 1999, was Sega's final console before the company focused entirely on software. Although the console was initially successful and management in the company improved significantly after harsh lessons were learned from the Sega Saturn fiasco, the console also faced stiff competition, especially from the technically superior PlayStation 2, despite being in the market over a year ahead. The Dreamcast sold less than the Saturn, coming in at 9.13 million units compared to the Saturn's 9.5 million. The console's development was subject to further stress by an economic recession that struck Japan shortly after the console's release, forcing Sega, among other companies, to cut costs in order to survive. Thus, Sega refocused itself solely around software. The Sega Saturn was the successor to the Genesis as a 32-bit, fifth-generation console, released in Japan in November 1994 and in Western markets mid-1995. The console was designed as a competitor to Sony's PlayStation, released nearly at the same time. With the system selling well in Japan and Sega wanting to get a head start over the PlayStation in North America, the company decided to release the system in May instead of September 1995, which was the same time the PlayStation was going to be released in North America. This left little time to promote the product and limited quantities of the system available at retail. Sega's release strategy also backfired when, shortly after Sega's announcement, Sony announced the price of the PlayStation as being $100 less than the list price for the Saturn. With the added competition from the subsequent release of the Nintendo 64, the Saturn lost market share in North America and was discontinued by 1999. With lifetime sales estimated at 9.5 million units worldwide, the Saturn is considered a commercial failure. Like the Nintendo systems, the PlayStation Classic was presented as a smaller form factor of the original PlayStation preloaded with 20 games. It was launched in early December 2018 with a suggested retail price of $99. The system was heavily criticized at launch. For 9 of the games, it used PAL versions, favored primarily in European market, rather than NTSC, favored primarily in North American market and Japan, meaning they ran at a slower 50 Hz clock compared to the 60 Hz. The emulation also lacked the feature set that Nintendo had set with its micro consoles. The included game list, while varied by region, also was noted to lack many of the titles that had made the original PlayStation successful and had a heavy focus on the early games on the console. Some of these absences were attributed to intellectual rights, but other omissions were considered odd and disappointing. The system sold poorly, and within the month, its suggested retail price had dropped to $59. By April 2019, the price had dropped to $30, and CNET described the PlayStation Classic as arguably one of the top flops of 2018. Sony's second major handheld game console, the PlayStation Vita, was released in Japan in 2011 and in the West the following year. The successor to the PlayStation Portable, Sony's intent with the system was to blend the experience of big-budget, dedicated video game platforms with the trend of mobile gaming. With a relatively low price, a robust launch title assortment, and a strong debut, analysts predicted the Vita would be a success. However, sales tanked shortly after release. Hardware production for the Vita ended entirely in March 2019, and Sony does not plan to release a successor. Games industry attributed the Vita's failure to a number of factors, including expensive memory card, competition from smartphones and Nintendo's rival 3DS platform, its design being too conceptually similar to the PSP, and a general lack of support from Sony and other developers. I hope you like this video. If you do, please subscribe and give a thumbs up. See you in the next episode, people, and have a nice day.